Have you ever been triggered by something so small, a harmless tone, a passing comment, maybe just a pause that felt too long, and suddenly your entire body goes tense? It doesn't look like much on the outside. You keep the conversation going. You nod. You smile. But inside, your heart is pounding. Your mind is racing. And long after the moment ends, you're still thinking about it. I used to brush those moments off, call myself too sensitive, tell myself to toughen up, to move on, to not take things so personally. But it kept happening. In meetings with friends, even with people I love, a single word, a certain tone, and something inside me would flinch. Not always out loud, but deep enough that it stayed with me. There was one moment that changed everything. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon. I was sitting across from someone I trusted, someone close. They interrupted me, not harshly, just casually moved the conversation in a different direction. Everyone kept talking, but I suddenly felt invisible, small, unseen. I walked home wondering why such a tiny moment left such a heavy mark. And then it hit me. That wasn't about today. That was about years of not being heard. Of feeling like my voice didn't matter. Like I had to shrink myself to keep the peace. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't about them. It was about me. That's when I found the work of Carl Jung. And something he said has stayed with me ever since. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. This video is for anyone who's ever asked themselves, why do I get triggered so easily? Why do I overreact to things I know aren't a big deal? Why does someone else's energy hijack my peace? In the next few minutes, we're going to go deep. Not into anger, but into the hidden story underneath it. We'll explore why triggers feel so personal, why your emotions aren't the problem, they're the clue, and how the parts of you you've tried to hide are the very parts that hold the key to your freedom. You don't need to become emotionless to feel peace. You just need to stop outsourcing your self-worth to people who were never meant to define it in the first place. So, if you've ever felt exhausted by your own reactions, if you're tired of snapping, shutting down, or spiraling over small things, this is your turning point, because this isn't about becoming stronger. It's about becoming whole. Let's begin. Most people think a trigger is caused by something outside of them. Someone was rude. Someone talked over you. Someone rolled their eyes, didn't respond to your message, or said something in a tone that felt off. And we say, they made me feel this way. They disrespected me. They pushed my buttons. But what if the real truth is this? They didn't push your buttons. They just found where they already were. What you call being triggered is not the moment something happens. It's the moment something unhealed inside you responds. Something old. Something raw. Something hidden under years of pretending it's not there. And here's the part no one wants to hear. It was never about them. Let that land. Yes, people can be disrespectful. Yes, boundaries matter. But the emotion, that rush of heat in your chest, that voice in your head that says, see, they don't care, that tightening in your jaw, or that sudden shutdown that comes from you. Not because you're weak, but because something inside you was touched. Something fragile, something familiar. That's why the same moment doesn't affect two people the same way. Imagine this. 3 people hear the same sentence from a boss. You could have done better. Person A shrugs it off. Person B gets motivated. Person C spirals into shame, self-doubt, and anxiety, because person C grew up hearing, you're never good enough. So that sentence wasn't just feedback, it was a trigger, a reminder of something buried but never gone. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the parts of us we deny, avoid, or pretend aren't there. But they don't go away. They wait. And when someone touches that nerve, your nervous system doesn't react to the present, it reacts to the past. So when you find yourself overreacting to something small, pause, take a breath, and ask, what story did I just tell myself? Because that's where the truth is. Not in the moment, but in the meaning you gave it. Here's the thing. You're not broken for being triggered. You're just being shown where your healing lives. That's not a weakness. That's an invitation. You don't need to stop being so sensitive. You need to understand why your sensitivity exists in the first place. Because triggers aren't random. They're repeats. They echo something familiar. And when you start paying attention to what they echo, you stop blaming other people for emotions that were never theirs to carry. The next time someone says something that hits you the wrong way, instead of snapping or shutting down, try asking this: what did this moment just reveal about me? That's how awareness begins. And awareness is the first crack in the armor. Because once you stop making others responsible for your reactions, you begin the real work. Understanding yourself. We've all been taught to be the better person, to stay calm, stay polite, don't make a scene. So you learn how to breathe through frustration, how to smile when you're hurt, how to say, it's fine, when deep down, it's absolutely not fine. And after a while, you start to think, that's who you are. The calm one, the collected one, the one who doesn't get caught up in drama. But here's the truth that most people miss. Just because you've gone silent doesn't mean your shadow has. Your shadow isn't loud in the way people think. It doesn't shout. It doesn't throw things across the room. Sometimes, it's just a tension in your body you can't explain. A feeling of resentment you can't put into words. A reaction you almost had but didn't. Carl Jung defined the shadow as the parts of ourselves we've rejected. Not because they're evil, but because somewhere along the way, we were told they were too much, too emotional, too intense, too angry, too needy, too opinionated, too human. So we pushed those parts underground. We became the good kid, the easy partner, the reliable one. And it worked on the surface. People liked us. We felt safe. But deep down, we began to forget what we actually feel. And the shadow, it didn't disappear. It just learned how to speak in code. That moment, you suddenly resent your friend for not listening, shadow. That tightness in your chest when someone gets praised and you don't, shadow. That passive-aggressive comment you said wasn't a big deal, still, shadow. And the quieter you become, the more the shadow whispers. Not to punish you, but to remind you. You can't heal what you refuse to see. Think about it. Maybe you hate people who brag. But deep down, you were punished for confidence. Maybe you roll your eyes at people who cry easily, but no one ever made space for your emotions. Maybe you resent people who take up space because you've spent your whole life shrinking. That's the shadow. It's not your enemy. It's your echo. And every time someone triggers you, they're not exposing who they are. They're exposing who you're still hiding. That's why healing isn't about becoming a better version of yourself. It's about reclaiming the parts you buried to survive. And yes, it's uncomfortable. It asks you to sit with your shame, your envy, your anger, your fear. Not to act on them, not to unleash them, but to recognize them, to say, I see you, I know where you came from. Because once you acknowledge the shadow, it no longer controls you from the dark. You start to feel lighter, more whole, more honest. Not performatively peaceful, but authentically present. And that's the power most people never tap into, because they're too busy trying to be liked, when what they truly need is to be seen by themselves. Have you ever had a moment where someone said something simple? Maybe they dismissed an idea, forgot to say thank you, or just didn't reply fast enough, and suddenly your heart sank. Not just a little hurt, but like you were right back in high school, or at that dinner table where no one listened, or in that relationship where you always had to prove your worth. And you wonder, why am I this upset over something that small? Here's the truth most people don't see. A trigger isn't a reaction to the present. It's a flashback to the past without the visuals. Carl Jung called these internal patterns complexes. They're emotional landmines wired into your system from experiences you didn't even know were shaping you. And when life steps on one, you're not reacting to the person in front of you. You're reacting to a memory your body never forgot. Let's say someone interrupts you. To most people, it's annoying. To you, it feels personal. It feels like a declaration. You don't matter, but it's not really them you're responding to. It's your father who always talked over you. It's the teacher who never called your name. It's the ex who only listened to reply. And suddenly, you're not 35 years old anymore. You're 8, or 12, or 17. Small again. Voiceless again. Triggered because your nervous system doesn't track time. It only tracks threat. That's why it's so hard to let go of certain things. Because you're not trying to release one moment. You're trying to untangle a pattern that's been running silently for years. And most people, they don't realize it. They don't slow down long enough to ask, wait, who am I really reacting to right now? So they lash out, or shut down, or over-explain, or disappear. And then they feel guilty, confused, ashamed, like they're too sensitive or too much. But you're not too much. You're just full of too many moments that never got to be felt, processed, understood, just buried. Until someone accidentally digs them up. The key is not to shame yourself when you get triggered. It's to get curious. Because every emotional flashback is a message. There's something here I haven't healed yet. And when you treat triggers as invitations instead of enemies, you start peeling back the story, underneath the story. Not just, they made me feel ignored, but I've felt invisible for a long time. And this moment reminded me, not just, they were cold. But I learned to equate love with attention. And now I chase it. Not just, they don't understand me. But I've spent so much of my life trying to be understood because I never really felt known. That's when the work begins. When you stop trying to fix your reaction and start tracing it back to its origin. Because once you see where it started, you can stop handing it power in your present. You realize they weren't the problem. They were the mirror. And the reflection you saw was the part of you still waiting to be held. We've all been taught how to suppress, how to smile through it, how to rise above, how to be unbothered. And at first it works. You feel composed. People call you mature, calm, grounded. But inside, you're tight, tired, numb in ways you can't explain. Because every time you push a part of yourself away, you don't lose it, you just bury it deeper. And the more you suppress, the more pressure builds under the surface. Carl Jung didn't tell us to kill our shadow. He told us to integrate it, to bring it to the light, to meet it without shame. Because what you hide doesn't disappear. It just learns to control you in quieter ways. Think of it like this. You're not getting triggered because you're weak. You're getting triggered because there's a part of you that still believes it's not allowed to feel. So instead of being honest about your anger, you fake calm. Instead of admitting you're hurt, you say, "I'm over it." Instead of speaking up, you say, "It's fine." But silence isn't strength. It's just a performance of peace. And the problem with pretending is that eventually you forget you're pretending. You don't just fool others, you fool yourself. And that's how you lose the most important relationship you have, the one with you. Integration means turning around and saying, "I see the part of me that's angry. I see the part of me that's jealous. I see the part of me that's tired of being invisible." And instead of exiling it, you invite it in. You don't let it drive the car, but you let it sit in the passenger seat. You listen. You understand. You take its hand instead of slamming the door in its face. Because when you make space for all of you, you stop leaking energy, trying to hide what's true. This is why meditation journaling and self-reflection matter. Not because they're trendy, but because they're tools to see what's been running the show from the dark. One of the most powerful things you can do is this. Next time you feel triggered, pause and ask yourself, what am I feeling that I usually avoid? What part of me just got activated? Where have I felt this before? Don't fix it. Don't shame it. Just name it. Because the moment you name something, you unmask it. And once it's unmasked, it loses its power. That's what Jung meant by integration wholeness. Not perfection, not pretending, just truth held with compassion. Because what makes you emotionally powerful isn't that you never get triggered again. It's that you can feel everything without becoming it. You don't suppress it. You translate it. You take your emotions from being reactions to being messages, from being outbursts to being insights. And once that shift happens, you're no longer just managing emotions. You're learning from them. That's when your inner world becomes stable, no matter how loud the outer one gets. Picture this. You walk into a room where you used to shrink. Maybe someone in there always made you feel small. Maybe their energy used to rattle you, the way they talk, the way they look, the way they never really see you. But this time, something's different. You notice the same tone, the same sarcasm, the same little digs they always made, but you don't flinch. You don't tighten. You don't spiral. You see it. You register it. And you let it pass like a breeze brushing past a mountain. That is freedom. Not because you became cold, not because you built walls, but because you stopped leaking power into people who were never meant to define you. Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And you've chosen to become whole. You've chosen to stop letting other people's behavior write your story, to stop making their tone your truth, to stop needing their validation to feel worthy. Because when you know who you are, you don't chase explanations. You don't need everyone to get you. You don't scramble to be understood. You just stand, calm, clear, unshaken. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. That's not indifference. That's inner peace. You still feel. You still care. But now you respond from a place of clarity, not survival. Someone mocks you. You don't internalize it. Someone misunderstands you. You don't over-explain. Someone walks away. You don't chase. Because the part of you that used to panic, you've already met them, held them, healed them, and now no one outside of you owns your center anymore. This is the quiet kind of strength most people never find, because they keep trying to fix the outside instead of understanding what it's really mirroring inside. But you've stopped fighting your reflection and started rewriting it. That's the final freedom. Not silence out of fear, not peace out of avoidance, but stillness born from truth. When the world tries to provoke you and you don't move, not because you're passive, but because you're present. Not because you shut it down, but because you've opened up enough to no longer be controlled. And that is the kind of peace that doesn't collapse under pressure, the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout, the kind of power that can only come from finally fully becoming you. So here we are, after all the noise, all the triggers, all the moments that used to shake you. What if the answer was never to fight them, but to face them? What if peace isn't something you chase out there, but something you remember in here? You don't need to become perfect. You don't need to be calm all the time. You just need to be honest with yourself. The real you, the angry you, the soft you, the version of you that's been waiting to be seen by you. Because once you stop running from your shadow, once you learn to hold it instead of hide it, no one gets to use it against you ever again. That's how freedom begins. Quiet, internal, real. And if this video helped you take even one step closer to that, I'm glad you're here. Like this video, if something inside you shifted, share it with someone you love who's learning to respond, not react. And if you're ready to keep going, to keep growing, subscribe, because we're not here to numb. We're here to understand, to heal, to integrate one truth at a time. And if you made it all the way to the end, drop a comment that says, "I'm not reactive, I'm rooted." So others know they're not alone in this work. You're not broken. You're remembering who you are. And I'll see you in the next one.